Well, good morning, everyone. It's time once again for Rockaway Fridays with the Wave. I'm Mark Healey, and it's not a fun Rockaway Fridays with the Wave, unfortunately. Although we love having Assembly Member Khaleel Anderson on, it's scary right now, and we're having the Assembly Member on to talk about the our front page story this week, which is, of course, the state basically threatening to turn St. John's Hospital, the only hospital on the peninsula, into a micro hospital. So good morning, Assembly Member, and welcome to the show.
Morning. Thank you for having me, Mark.
Okay, so I know the micro hospital option that the Department of Health has offered to St. John's is only one of three options, but all three options, Khaleel, and I'm sure at this point you've been able to read through everything. They all cut jobs, cut services, and really cripple the peninsula's only hospital. So what was your reaction when you heard that this was going to happen, or at least is in the planning process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that question, Mark, and thank you so much to the Wave for covering this critically important story. My first reaction was frustration, fear. To see that the way that our State Department of Health is thanking St. John's for their critically important work at the height of the pandemic is to say that you need to reduce your beds, you need to close. Essentially, is what. Reducing down from 257 beds down to 15 is essentially saying Rockaway drop dead. It's essentially saying you need to close. It's essentially saying that thank you, but no thank you. And St. John's Hospital has been a critical ally and support, not just during COVID, but as a consistent provider of healthcare since we lost the Peninsula Hospital just 8 plus years ago. And so I was extremely angry and frustrated that the idea of reducing us to a micro hospital was even on the table. And I'm quite sure, I've spoken to many leaders, quite sure that they are feeling the same way. Because this hospital is not just a provider of healthcare, it's one of our largest economic engines on this peninsula.
And that's what's also being lost. I mean, obviously, the potential devastating impact to healthcare is one thing. It's also 1,000. We're talking about 1,000 jobs.
Plus,
I mean, it's like one of those old timey movies where the mill closes and everybody loses their job. People just don't seem to understand what St. John's has been doing this whole time. As you said, when Peninsula Hospital closed, the daunting task that was set for St. John's is they were going to have to take over, they're going to have to take care of over 100,000 people. Let's be honest. And, the road may have been bumpy, especially in the beginning, but ever since Jerry O'Hara came on board over at St. John's and the rest of the board, Renee Hastic-Moats, and all the people that we work with from the Wave on a regular basis. I mean, these people have been doing a fantastic job. You look at the prenatal and the care for moms and for children. I mean, this is devastating. So because those are the services that will go, regardless of what plan. People will have to go off the peninsula. If you want to have a baby and you live in Rockaway, you're going to have to go somewhere else to have it. I mean, that is, and I get it. You mentioned your fellow lawmakers who are upset. But here's the thing. The time, and I tweeted this yesterday, and I'm not taking shots at any one person. All I'm saying is the time for stern letter writing is over. The statements, it's great that you have a statement. And I went after Congressman Meeks a little bit. And I said, that's great. We all agree with you. We're all frustrated. What are you going to do about it? And to his credit, he actually answered me back and he said, I'm going to work with legislators to make sure that this doesn't happen. So I ask you the question now, Khaleel. How can we fight the Department of Health to make sure that this doesn't happen, and instead of decreasing funding to St. John's, that they do what St. John's asked for, which was an independent study, which said they need more funding, not less. So how will you help us help the community fight this decision?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. We got to rally. We've got to demonstrate. We have to be and show a strong level of force against this. But after we survive this crisis, because we will survive this crisis, and the hospital will not be closed, because this is the first time, and of course I'm new, but the first time in my tenure that all elected officials are on one page and we're organizing with the union together to figure out a solution for the hospital. But after we survive this crisis, we have to look at long term. And what does long term look like? Long term looks like assessing the involvement and the intent of private consultants in this space, right? So, this story goes that there was a private consultant that was hired by the New York State Department of Health to look at the financial viability of the hospital. And this was one of the 3 plans that they put in front of St. John's Hospital. And the fact that this consulting firm has a track record, Mark, a track record of closing hospitals across this city, including the hospital that my father worked at. One of his first jobs when he immigrated here to the United States, one of his first jobs was working at St. Vincent's Hospital. This consulting firm, again, has a track record of cutting and closing. They look at dollars and cents, not people and humans. And this we have to assess and analyze what the role is of these consultant firms that are subcontracted by the state to provide these assessments, because oftentimes it's close, cut, and there's very little space to save and restore. And that's really what we need to look at legislatively. And also, I know my colleague, Fefa Amato, has some legislation around looking at the Medicare and Medicaid payments that our hospitals receive, safety net hospitals in particular, and making sure that we up that funding model so that not just when we're faced with crisis, but over time, we're flowing the correct amount of state dollars into safety net hospitals. And I think, and thirdly, and I'm giving you substance because it's critically important that we move beyond the crisis once we survive from it, but we also have to look at another designation for this hospital. Yes, we're a safety net hospital. Yes, primarily Black and brown folks that this hospital serves, X, Y, and Z, 100,000 people, fine. But there's got to be a designation for hospitals that are in geographically isolated areas, so that when the Department of Health is engaging on financial distress of a hospital, they're engaging from a point of understanding that this is in a geographic area that is far from everything, and it's also a safety net hospital. Looking at all those factors in one, we've got to change the model on how we look at this hospital, because it's not just a hospital, it's the hospital for this area, for this geography. The nearest one is probably upwards of 5 miles away at Jamaica Hospital. And if we were back at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, thousands and thousands of more lives would have been lost if we didn't have St. John's Hospital as a buffer. So we've got to recognize that as well.
There's no question about that. And it's funny, you bring up the track record of the consulting firm, 20 Corp Associates. And, it's just funny that, and it's not funny. It's not funny that the managing director of that consulting firm is now the deputy commissioner of the Department of Health, appointed by Cuomo back, I believe, in August.
Mark, you got to look at and I haven't looked, but I'm pretty sure you've got to look at the campaign contributions. You got to look at the campaign contributions.
There's no doubt that there's something fishy going on here. There's no doubt that this is something that another example of, and let's be honest. Let's be honest about something else too, okay? With Governor Cuomo specifically, who always talks about he's a guy from Queens. When's the last time he was in Rockaway? Because I got to be honest, I've been here, like I said, 7 years in May. I think he was in Rockaway once, and he was in Breezy Point under a tent for something, and he was here for about 5 minutes. I don't remember the last Sandy Remembrance he was at. I don't remember the last time he came and took a tour of Far Rockaway, took a tour of Bell Harbor, took a tour of Rockaway Beach, for any kind of 9/11 remembrance, any kind of, any kind of visit to Tribute Park, any kind of,
Mark, I have one memory, and sorry to cut you. I got
no,
one
go ahead,
memory.
go ahead, because I couldn't remember one.
I've got one memory, Mark, of the governor coming here. He takes us for granted, clearly. The mayor has been here more than him. Obviously, he represents.
Which is frightening when you think about it.
Behave, Mark. But I have one memory of meeting the governor here in the Rockaways in 2012 at the Ocean Bay Apartments when that huge fire happened and the flood happened shortly after Superstorm Sandy. He did come, he did visit, but he was very curt in his visit and very not so warm, particularly when a lot of us have lost everything from power to food to loved ones. And so this is a continuous trend, and we've got to make sure that we hold our elected leaders accountable, not just the legislators who live here in the community.
Right.
3 out of the 4 elected officials that represent this peninsula live here.
Right.
On the state level, not the city level, but on the state level. So that's critically important, not just for people understanding what this peninsula is and what it means to us, but also in terms of power, in terms of understanding our neighborhoods. That's critically important. It's the first time in a long time that we've had that teeter-totter balance and making sure that the Rockaways is well represented in Albany.
Well, look, and I'm glad you interrupted me. I'm glad you told me that he was here in 2012. But again, like I've been here since 2014, so that's why I didn't remember that.
Exactly.
But he hasn't been here since, and I think that's part of the problem. I think that's part of the problem. I mean, how can you hope to govern if your representatives aren't here? You know what I'm saying? And as far as I know, I mean, I don't know how much contact you've had with him in your short time there. I don't know how much contact that Stacey Pfeffer Amato has had, or Joe Adabo, or James Sanders. I don't know what kind of open floor of communication that Governor Cuomo has with the constituents from an important area like Rockaway. Which is so important to, not only the city's funding, but certainly the state's funding as well. The amount of money that is generated by the peninsula, we don't seem to ever get the kind of, attention put on us to balance out, that contribution that we make every year to the overall fund. Yeah, we get a lot of funding, but we also create a lot of revenue. We also create a lot of tourism. So I think this crisis, and that's what I'm going to call it, it's a crisis, needs all of us to work together.
Exactly right.
Whether it's the wave, whether it's the legislators, whether it's the civics. And I know, just based on my experience with you, I know you're going to fight. I know that you're going to be out there rolling up your sleeves, and doing what needs to be done. I am a little concerned, though, about how powerful, this State Department of Health is. And, I'm very concerned not only for the lives of people that live here on the peninsula, but also the people that work there. Have you been given any kind of timetable or anything like that, where you're going to be able to talk to somebody from the Department of Health?
Yeah, so we've reached out to the Department of Health, and we've also reached out to the governor's office. We are waiting a reply to respond not just to what we've raised as genuine concerns about this plan, but also what's the plan forward and what are the other options for this hospital. Obviously, we want to make sure that they are able to have an independent assessor come in and look at look at and assess some stones that might not have been turned over via the state. But it just looks like making sure that we all work together, we're all on the same page. But certainly we've got to make sure that we get a response and we're united in our response. I'm a freshman. I'm a new elected. Well, I think I'm a junior now. But the ranks matter. But and so I'm going to be working with my more senior colleagues to ensure that we're all on one accord and we get a straightforward response. No BS, we'll get back to you in a week, because that's one of the struggles that we're hearing, and I've experienced already in my tenure about this administration. Not responding to the legislature, there's a genuine sense of a contempt for the legislature that I'm feeling from the executive. And so that requires us to push harder. That requires us to sometimes go public. That requires us to put pressure. And it shouldn't be, because we're co-equal branches.
It's very important that you bring that up, because that, it's bad enough that there is this, as you said, kind of disconnect between the administration and the state legislature. The other thing is that
contempt.
Right. Well, you said contempt. I was trying to be nice, but we'll say contempt. But because of I guess what I was trying to say is I think there was always a disconnect, but now that the administration is facing so many questions, whether it's the nursing home scandal, whether it's this sexual harassment scandal, when you don't run a competent, smooth, when the ship is not being run smoothly, any kind of crisis or any kind of challenge that comes up, it makes it that much harder to navigate those kinds of waters. And that's why, I understand, because I read the transcript that came out a couple of weeks ago, and I really saw the frustration from longtime legislators who were Democrats that thought of themselves as being allied with this administration, who were being just as ignored as your, counterparts from across the aisle. And, when you have that kind of, as you said, contempt for the people that are supposed to hold you accountable, it's kind of hard to have any kind of, I like to walk in somebody else's shoes. I do. I always try to look at that before I make a decision or how I judge an issue. I think in this specific issue of St. John's and what's at stake, the governor can no longer ignore it. He's got to deal with it, and he's got to deal with the consequences of his decisions, specifically putting this person from Tony Korff Associates in the Department of Health, and then having this kind of decision-making process where the only hospital on the peninsula could become basically a glorified urgent care. And again, we're not saying that urgent cares aren't important, but what we are saying is that why
we need a hospital.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what's been accomplished over the last couple of years at St. John's. I mean, these people
Absolutely.
are doing good work. They're saving lives. They're making our lives better. So, in closing, Khaleel, what do you think are the next steps, and how can the paper help? How can local civics and those kinds of folks help? What are you looking for the community to do to help your efforts and the other lawmakers' efforts to make sure this doesn't come to pass?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's critically important in this moment is certainly getting the information out there, letting people know what's going on. So keeping everyone in the know as it relates to our constituency, people who live here in the Rockaways, so that they can be just as angry and frustrated as we are as elected officials. I think that's one step. I think the second step is just checking in with us as electeds, making sure you hold us accountable. We are working diligently on this and will be for the days to come as long as this takes. So just checking in with us, making sure that we have any new information that you get, and we're sharing information in that respect. But also our civics, our community leaders, when we're ready, and hopefully we get to do a socially distanced demonstration if that's what's needed. But I'm prepared to do that, as I come from an activist background, that they'll be on the ready for when we're ready to have to go out and peacefully demonstrate, not near the hospital, but in a location that is safe and we can socially distance, just to make our voices heard as a Rockaway Peninsula, to affirm the need for this hospital and our commitment to ensuring that they keep their hands off of our hospital.
Look, I know you have a busy day ahead of you today in Albany, and I just wanted to thank you for making the time to be with us today, and for all the help that you gave us yesterday to get the story
out. We're going to be voting on some nursing home bills today.
Yes, I am aware. So I'm certainly looking forward to talking with you more on this subject. Thank you again for making time in your busy day. And just a shout out to your staff. They did a great job in a very short amount of time to make this happen, to make our interview yesterday happen. So best of luck, and go get them. Go get them, Khaleel.
Thank you so much, Mark. Much appreciated. And thank you to the Wave for having me. Be well.